Coming up on this edition of Main Street, close to home. Our first stop is a bed and breakfast in Auburn with a sweet surprise. Then we'll visit a Park City artist whose sculptures are always in bloom. Next, meet a farmer in Metcalf County that has a healthy alternative to raising tobacco. And finally, we end up back at home in Bowling Green with a type of artist we think you'll love. Straight ahead on Main Street.
Funding for Main Street was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you who support quality programs such as Main Street that appear only on public television.
Hello and welcome to Main Street. I'm Barbara Deeb. We're here at the historic Federal Grove Bed and Breakfast in Auburn, Kentucky. Restored in 1991, the property actually dates back to a land grant following the Revolutionary War. Now these days it's home to an unusual operation for Kentucky. Stay with us for a look inside. Making maple syrup in Kentucky may seem a bit out of the ordinary, but for the owners of Federal Grove Bed and Breakfast in Auburn, Kentucky, they wanted to do a little something extra to sweeten their visitors' experience. Now, if you were to visit these parts in late February or early March, the sweet smell of maple syrup comes wafting through the air. Let's take a look at how this sweet sensation is made.
That floating of aroma in the air is something that attracts everybody. During our festival, everybody wants to huddle around the sugar house because that steam is awfully sweet to smell. It's just a kind of a foreign idea of doing maple syrup in Kentucky. It's such a strange notion to do that this far south. We claim to be the southernmost maple producer. We'll continue to add that banner to ourselves until someone proves us different. But being this far south, unless someone's had a New England experience in Vermont and going to a sugar house up north, they probably haven't experienced it firsthand. Well, we actually started about 2008. We were just kind of thinking about what sort of product idea we could have for Federal Grove, how to promote the bed and breakfast and restaurant. Maple syrup is something that my father-in-law up in Lawrenceburg had attempted and done successfully a few years back. So I thought, it's not that much, we're not that much further south, so we should be able to pull that off. And we tapped our first tree. The one back over behind us there is a little sample test tap, and it immediately in the middle of January began to flow. We said, we've got 50 more in the yard here, so why not just continue this? And we began to assimilate the necessary equipment to do it, and it started our little maple industry here. Well, from sap to syrup, it's an arduous task, to say the least. This process begins, from maple trees. Sugar maple trees is what we have. Early to mid-January, we'll actually come and tap that tree. We go in about 2 inches deep with a drill. The trees give sap. When we have a night of freezing weather, a day of thawing, the sap flows. We collect that sap from the woods, haul it in from various methods, gators, trucks, whatever it takes to haul it. It does become a large process of hauling because you have lots of gallonage out there in the woods to collect. You've got to haul it all back to a central processing facility, which we call the sugar house. And once that is all brought back to the sugar house, it's just a sequence of condensing that product through a series of evaporation methods, one of which we run it up into our sap tank. Once it goes in there, we start this boiling process. And to be pure maple syrup, all we're doing is removing water from the sap. We start out at about 98% water, 2% sugar, and we're wanting to achieve a 66% sugar product. And at that point, it is maple syrup. But we're just meandering it through this process of evaporation, all the while losing water concentrating the sugar into that sweet stuff we call maple syrup. Smell that? There's different methods of collection, and in our method here at this farm, we're actually doing gravity sap collection, which is the lesser way to collect. You actually could produce more if you were on vacuum, but we have buckets hanging from the trees. This is the traditional form of collecting of sap, but that's really the least labor intensive, which we like. But one tree on the gravity method will produce about a quart of finished syrup. I'm sorry, one tap hole, I should say, will produce about a finished quart of syrup in a season. So if you're at a 40 to 1 gallon ratio, you're talking about 10 gallons of sap that tree will produce, or that one tap hole will produce in a season. Well, the main thing, with groups like that we're here today, and even adults that come in, it's just a kind of a foreign idea of doing maple syrup in Kentucky. So we want to kind of walk them through all the processes of the maple industry, and who is big in it, who is small. We are the smallest state as far as we know in production. And just how difficult it is. Maple syrup is considerably more expensive than pancake syrup, which is corn syrup, and we want to explain to them why. Why there's so much labor involved, such a process to get it to that pure state. Very few pure products anymore. Maple syrup is one of those, and we want to emphasize the importance of that. And everyone's trying to get back to the land and understand the origin of their foods, and what better way to come and watch a natural product being made in your backyard. And it comes to the front tank, and then we're going to finish it. We've got to be good stewards of what we've been given. We've been given wonderful maple trees. They're a tremendous resource. A little small tree, I was just telling the kids earlier today, it takes almost 20 to 25 years for that tree just to be healthy enough, large enough to produce sap that we can take. And if we handle things properly and use our standards that the maple industry has created to protect those trees, they literally can give that sap their entire life, beyond our generation. 75 to 100 years from now, those trees will still be producing. And I've been to sugar bushes, which is what a cluster of maple trees is called up north, and there are trees that have been tapped there for over 100 years, and they're still healthy, vibrant trees. And there's no harm done to them in the process, and nature's way of giving back to us an awfully sweet sampling of their work. I do tend to have a little pride when it comes to Federal Grove. I love our place here. I think that folks, and I see people enjoying themselves when they come to Federal Grove. It's a place that folks gather and get together. We always see them in a celebratory mood. They're always here, they're happy, and they're having a good time. So it makes us have a good time. It's fun serving people when they're having fun. But we proudly serve our folks meals. We have a bed and breakfast, and we also, the maple syrup has become an integral part of our business as well, as kind of letting folks know what we do that's special around here. You can eat a meal here, but you also can see something done that's probably not done, at least publicly, for several hundred miles away. God has blessed me with what I have here, and we've been able to do this and make a living at it. And the old adage, and I've heard it in recent days, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I feel like that's what we're doing here.
Sharon Haines' love of art and gardening is a perfect background for a career in natural materials. Most of those natural materials come from her garden in Barron County, where Sharon puts together some beautiful sculptures that stay in bloom all year long.
The flowers are my palette. I paint pictures with the flowers, the different colors, the textures, and I use things, not just the things that I grow, but from all over the world that are bright and colorful, or they have unusual shapes, textures. It's just painting or sculpture. I was an art teacher at one point when I lived in Michigan. When we came to Kentucky, I couldn't get a teaching job, and I was always a gardener in Michigan. I started gardening here. As I went along, I dried a lot of things and played with it, and I've always wanted to create. That's basically what I like to do, is make something pretty, make create something out of whatever it is I have around me. And when I taught school, I never had the energy or the time to be artistic. So with the gardens, I started growing lots of different types of flowers that I could preserve or dry. I started doing a few little local craft shows, and it just kind of grew from there. And people will say, well, why don't you just, the market wants this type of thing. Why don't you just make that and just sell that? Well, that's not art to me. I mean, sometimes you have to do that, but most of the time when I'm designing a piece, it's just for the sake of the design, the sake of the textures and the colors that I'm working with. I'm more inspired by the colors and the shapes and the sizes, textures, than I am about what the final piece will be. I see a lot of things that I know will go together well, and it might end up being a wreath, it might end up being a centerpiece. To put these things together, I use hot glue. I use a little miniature frying pan with hot glue in it. I gather up anything that I make, I take apart the raw material. Lavender, or if it's something on a stem like leaves, I end up taking all of those apart and then sculpting with them. That nothing is in its real natural state anymore, because I just change it. And the glue is really all I ever use to put it all together. I use nothing silk or artificial or plastic. I only use natural materials. In fact, I don't even like the word or term dried flowers. I'd rather call natural preserved botanicals, because that gives you a wider view of what I'm doing. They are botanicals. They're pods and seeds and cattail, anything. There are all kinds of different shapes that grow in nature and colors. They're not just dried flowers. It is important to give them things that they have a memory of. The most interesting one I had last year was a lady she was German. She had pictures of these straw flower balls that used to hang in her house, or her mother's house, or her grandmother's house, I'm not sure. They were like big kissing balls, and they were completely covered with straw flowers, and then ribbons, and they hung from the ceiling. And she so desperately wanted me to reproduce those pieces for her that reminded her of her childhood and the way she grew up. And last year was a bumper crop for my straw flowers, so I had lots of colors and choices, and she was just tickled to death because I was able to give her something that she was fond of. When I wake up in the morning and look out in the backyard and see the sun coming through the leaves of whatever is out there, when I walk through the gardens, all of that inspires me. With working with preserved and dried botanicals like I do, they have a long shelf life. They'll be around for a while. They're not forever like a painting, but they're still going to be there for a while. I love my gardens. And I love the work, and I love going to shows and meeting people. All of it.
Jenny and Larry Martin started farming blueberries together in Michigan back in the early 1990s. Well, about 1995, they moved their operation to Kentucky, and in so doing, more than doubled the state's number of blueberry plants. So if you have a taste for anything blueberry, you might travel down to Metcalf County for a tour of Bluegrass Blueberries.
Boy, I got started in blueberries as a child, really, when I was just knee-high or so. Even when I went away to college, blueberries was still in my life. I would go back home during the summer to earn extra money, even through college. So I learned blueberries from my early childhood on, and eventually bought my uncle's farm when he passed away. And 16 years ago, when we moved here to Kentucky, we sold my blueberry farm there, my uncle's original farm, and moved here to start blueberries. The season with blueberries is most of the year you're kind of off. You know, there's very little to do in the off season. The main intense part is when the crop is ripe, and for about 6 weeks in the summertime here in Kentucky, we're just feverishly picking berries, which is what we're doing now. And the harvest time is the tough time because, you know, we gross about $20,000 off of an acre, and that's a lot of pounds of berries moving through, and they all got to be picked and packaged and moved out. And so we're very, very busy for about 6 weeks. I don't get very much sleep. I'm a little tired right now, and I'm sweating because it's hot here and we're working like crazy. I've got people filling grocery store orders while we're talking here right now, and it's a hectic time. But then the rest of the year is like a school teacher almost. They're off in the summer. I'm working the summer, but I'm off the rest of the year when it comes to the crop. I like it out here in the country, in the hills of Kentucky. See, we only have about 200 acres of blueberries in Kentucky, and Michigan's got over 19,000 acres of blueberries, and they're just going to get started about the 4th of July weekend up there. We're going to be pretty much done by the 4th of July weekend. So we've got a wide open market because we beat them to the punch with an early crop, and people drive for hundreds of miles sometimes to get berries from me because there's very few berries here in Kentucky. You know, 200 acres is not but a drop in the bucket. And it seems to be an ideal climate for blueberries. We get a higher yield off of our bushes here in Kentucky than we do up in Michigan. We get more green growth. See, the berries are always on the end of the previous year's growth. So in Michigan, they just grow up so high and you'd have berries out here. Here in Kentucky, we get another flush of growth, and then we get berries on the end of all those branches. So I think we get higher, I know we get higher yields here than they do up in Michigan. We're pretty much a family-run sort of business. You know, it was my wife and I that came down originally, but then my son got into it, and my brother and my nephew, and we've got the whole organization of the Kentucky Blueberry Growers Association set up too. So we work together as a big group there too. So I've got other people growing bushes for me and bringing berries in, and we work together to fill some of the bigger orders of berries. We sell the berries different ways. You know, we've got quite a bit of U-pick business, even out here in the country where we're quite a bit off the beaten path, which is kind of nice because we have no packaging in that, and they've supplied the labor. So we do have a lot of pickers out in the field. Typically, we'll have 12 or 15, sometimes as high as 30 pickers picking for me out in the field, and they are picking berries that we package for the grocery stores and wineries and different places that buy berries from us. So that's the two main ways that we sell berries, I guess. A lot of them are sold also right fresh off the farm. You know, we've got several boxes that we boxed up that are going to be picked up here, you know, anytime customers come in and out and they order 10 or 20, or some people order 150 or 200 pounds of berries and they freeze them and use them through the year. They're so healthy for you. A lot of people, you know, stock up on them in the freezer. I certainly like dealing with the people, and I feel so good about helping people get started in blueberries because it's such a healthy thing compared to raising tobacco for people. We're raising something with antioxidants that is really good for people, and I can show a farmer how to start on a shoestring budget. I'm a Christian fellow, and I like helping people, and I think that you know, if I can show somebody how to make a pretty darn good living and start out with very little money, I get a kick out of that, helping people. We're always welcome to share information and teach people about how to grow blueberries. We have people here all the time. And, you know, if anybody wants to know more about blueberries, they're free to visit us or contact us. And we normally will spend an hour or 2 hours with anybody that's interested in getting into farming blueberries. See if we can show them the nurseries, how we propagate the baby bushes, the fields and the equipment we use and that sort of thing, and see if it's something they really want to consider getting into. So we're free with information and glad to help anybody that might want to come out to the farm.
Leslie Nichols is a unique visual artist. She breathes new life into the written word, and with the help of an old typewriter, she tells stories that are picture perfect.
I've been into art since I was a little girl. It's just always been a dream to be a painter and to be a drawer, and I've always doodled, and I love written word, and so I'd have sketchbooks just filled with writing and drawings, and they would intermingle. So I've always used words to play with, and the work that I'm doing now has developed because I was given a typewriter as a gift, and so I started doing writings on the typewriter, and I'm not a very gifted writer, so I started making drawings with the letters on the typewriter. And so that's kind of just snowballed into incorporating text into my professional work. I want people to see representation of people as complex beings, as people that are thinking, as people that are evolving and becoming something rather than just a stagnant image or a stagnant thing. So something that's dynamic, even though the works are kind of quiet, but there's a subtle dynamic nature to them. So I want them to see an energy. Well, my current work that I'm really excited about moving forward with is going to be all about women, and it's going to be about women as represented by shared and personal histories. So I'm going to choose words that are from historical text and text by women, and then also more personal words. So some of it's, when I do my self-portraits, I use stream of consciousness writing, or I'll choose a word that describes the subject that I'm doing. And then for these works that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be using specific texts written by women or written about women. So hopefully they add a little bit more to the image besides, just the image. They add another layer to them. Being an artist is definitely like a constant evolution. It's a constant excitement and a constant challenge. I think the biggest thing is that I feel so blessed and so lucky that I can spend my time, creating things and making things and thinking about things. So I think more than anything, I really get a sense of peace from exploring how I feel about life and being able to live that life and share it with people. I think definitely one of the largest rewards I get from being an artist is when other people are inspired by what I do. I think it's just really exciting that someone else can go away and be like, I can't believe you did that, or it means so much that you did this, or if somebody just comes up and thinks about something new or just expands their world like it expands mine. So being an artist expands the world, and I love that. I think I definitely look for images of people that are contemplative, images that are, definitely portray people as more of thinking beings and especially for the women that I choose. I think women in art are so often portrayed as kind of more sexual subjects or more something just to look at. And so I really try to find images of women that, are more spiritual or are calm or are thinking, rather than just kind of a passive image. I mean, they're still quiet because I don't really like confrontation in my work because I want it to be something that's approachable. I think some of my favorite art is participatory art. I think that there's art for everyone. I think that there's different types of art, and I think there's room for all of it. Life would be so boring without art. Because art, it's an expression of where our culture is. It's an expression of the liberty that people have. It's a way to gauge a community in terms of what's going on in that community. It keeps people, thinking. It keeps people aware of things. Why do we not need art?
Well, our journey has come to an end, but don't let it stop there. We welcome any questions, comments, or story ideas. You can write to us at Main Street, care of WKYU PBS, 1906 College Heights Boulevard, number 11034, Bowling Green, Kentucky, 42101. Or call us at 270-745-2400 or 1-800-599-2424. And don't forget the World Wide Web. Check out our webpage at the address on your screen. Here you can find our email address as well. We hope you've enjoyed this look at the interesting people, places, and things that make our Commonwealth so unique. A special thanks to Terry Blythe and the folks here at Federal Grove Bed and Breakfast in Auburn, Kentucky. Until next time, I'm Barbara Deeb. And remember, we're just around the corner on Main Street.